I told her.
My dad, he wears his Notre Dame ring every day. I've never seen him take it off. And he wasn't wearing it anymore. His finger that has a permanent mark from his ring didn't have his ring on. And it was even more heartbreaking for me to watch my dad.
I call her from 1,000 miles away and tell her this. And I just wanted her to be there.
Lizzie always had this big, beautiful, radiant smile. It was electric, and it made other people happy. We had 11 family members attend Notre Dame and 2 family members, including Lizzie, that went to St. Mary's. And she, I think, really felt affirmed that this was the right choice. And she was really, really happy to be there. She went over on August 31st with a friend to attend an activities fair at Notre Dame. And that evening, they went back to this football player's room. It was 4 of them in there, the football player and his friend, and Lizzie and her friend. And then, I guess rather suddenly, the other 2 left the room and left Lizzie alone with this football player. And then he basically jumps her. He pulls her on top of him and removes her shirt and bra, and then also begins to try to take off her pants. And the next day, Lizzie reports, it never crossed our mind that they wouldn't do right. The accused, they couldn't find him. They had difficulty locating him. Everyone knows where this individual is. Certainly the athletic department knows. He played 2 home football games before he was interviewed. Notre Dame Stadium holds 80,000 people. So that's times 2, 160,000 people knew where this guy was before the Notre Dame security police could find him.
There was a directive that the campus police cannot contact an athlete at any athletic facility, and we cannot contact any athletic employee to assist us in contacting the athlete that we would be looking for.
So what was the point of that?
I guess just to keep us away from student athletes.
So Lizzie ends this exchange of intimidating texts from the football player's friend, and he comes at her with a text: "Don't do anything you would regret. Messing with Notre Dame football is a bad idea." And then Lizzie takes that message and immediately forwards it to the detective in charge. And later, the county prosecutor said that they would not be filing any charges on that particular complaint, and saying that it wasn't a threat because the individual who sent it believed he was trying to prevent someone from filing a false report. She was becoming very anxious about this whole situation. One of her friends is quoted as saying that she said, he's going to get away with it. He denied everything and made comments like she was the aggressor. Friday evening, I finally looked at my phone and I saw a text from my wife's best friend saying, you need to call right away. And I remember the words, and it was, it's bad. It's bad. Lizzie took her life today. She's gone. It's brutal. Just really profoundly sad in those moments when you just think she's not here with us.
Is it just students? Is it everybody? Some students that they're right?
Students and university community members.
So I'm in Oregon. Dre ends up moving to Oregon and taking the semester off. Every place I've separated with a semicolon is a difference. She and I started talking and we're like, okay, we're gonna keep doing this. Don't know how we're gonna fund it, but we're gonna do something. We called everybody. Most people totally laughed it off.
Just looking at rape reporting in general, it's really low.
But one of the people who we had reached out to about the UNC case was at the New York Times, and he's like, oh, that's interesting. It ended up becoming a front page New York Times story.
That's when we got a flood of emails, Facebook, tweets. Like somebody tweeted at me too. It happened to me too.
This is Annie, and Andrea is here with me. Do you see a button in the middle of your screen? It says start video.
Oh, look at that. It was my freshman year. I'd been at school for a couple of weeks. I made friends in some frat houses.
People reached out through all these different mediums, a lot of Facebook, a lot of emails.
I froze and couldn't fight back.
I don't know if it's appropriate to have told this story to you without asking, and I'm sorry if it's been harmful to you in any way. But it needs to stop. Wow.
I remember I was in one meeting after some story broke, and I had 50 calls in an hour. I had 50 calls.
I've never heard of a case that has gone in like the survivor's favor.
I mean, he admitted it.
He admitted to sexual assault and got an 8-week suspension.
Mm-hmm. The dean of students accused me of being drunk and told me that I had like a serious problem.
So many of the survivors coming forward were saying my rape was bad, but the way I was treated was worse. I was raped in the honors dorm, above the department's office, and the department office took my scholarship. It just doesn't.
I was up working at 4, and then I'd go to work, and then I'd come back, and sometimes there'd be survivors in my apartment that needed to talk.
I think you probably hear stories like this all the time.
I know, but it doesn't make it any better.
Now I'm realizing like how much better I feel when we're talking about it.
You're not alone. You're not alone. And no matter how many awful things, I basically had to make a choice if I wanted to continue to support survivors or have my actual administrative job at a university. I figured I could do more good this way, so I resigned.
On our to-do list, we have Vanderbilt.
Yep.
UConn.
Formalizing a national network's on our to-do list.
That's pending.
I found their paychecks.
What Dre and I are looking to see is how do we show that UNC, it's not in isolation. We started seeing, what was happening at campuses across the country. We look at all the cases we've heard, and we make this map. Every time another school called or whatever, we put a dot on the map. And I remember talking to Dre, and I'm like, why has no one connected the dots before? You have a case at Amherst, Yale, Penn State, Berkeley, Oxy, UNC, and nobody said, I think we should connect these dots because there might be something going on here bigger than one problem.
And you see how many people are being impacted by them, and every one of those dots being more than one story. You start to see it as an epidemic. What if we could build a network? What if we could connect our stories? That we could actually make campus rape a problem that people cared about.
Hi, Sophie. Hi. Do you want to see Dre? Can you see?
Sophie was one of the first activists who reached out, and she was from Berkeley.
There's been an increase in the number of sexual assaults that have happened.
She's like, this is exactly what's happening at Berkeley. I know so many other people that are dealing with this. How can we do what you did? And so we started working together. Are you scared of retaliation at all?
Yeah. So far, the students who know have been really, really supportive. I think that once maybe the fraternities find out, then that could be bad. It's called Collegiate ACB, and there are all of these fraternities that post on it about like, oh, who's the most attractive? Which house is the best house? Or people that say, I was raped at Sigma Chi last weekend, or I was raped at Teak once.
Why is your name in it?
Oh my God, I don't know. I did not think I was going to be on this stupid site.
Well, also how they spelled your name, though.
I know, Sophium Carasicum? Whatever that means. They wrote my name. They wrote it in Latin. I don't understand. Probably
Yes, it's
search
Sophia.
it. Interesting.
The American fraternity industry spans thousands of American colleges, from the most elite private Ivy League institutions to small regional colleges. We all know about inflicted trauma from hazing, but it's a matter of public record that the second most common type of insurance claim against the fraternity industry is from sexual assault.
I don't want to single out fraternities because it's actually a minority of fraternities, but what you inevitably get are certain fraternities where the sexual assault is really rampant.
Within just say the last 5 to 10 years, Sigma Alpha Epsilon's had a number of problems.
SAE is known at a lot of places as sexual assault expected. Sexual assault expected.
Sexual assault expected.
SAE. Sexual assault expected.
Is there any like parties or places that you've been warned not to go?
SAE. Sexual assault expected.
Sigma Nu, SAE, DEEC, the very top. Those like the main ones where as a freshman you're told like don't go there.
There's one fraternity on campus that is called the Date Rape Frat.
DKE is known as the Roofie Frat.
There was one that was called the Rape Dungeon.
Once you get a group of people like this in that kind of synergistic kind of culture forming, it intensifies this problem.
Pledges at a fraternity at Yale surrounded the dorm where many of the freshman girls lived at night, shouting,
No means yes, yes means no. No means yes, yes means no. No means yes, yes means no. No means yes, yes means
Well, I ended up pledging SAE Sigma Alpha Epsilon. It's one of the largest national fraternities, somewhat notorious for its bad reputation. Every Wednesday night, we would have what we would call meetings where all the brothers, usually about 70 if all were in attendance, would gather in the basement and begin a highly structured ritual, exchanging stories of sexual conquest. If a brother had anal sex with a woman, that would be mentioned, and that would be a kind of the pat on the back moment. And I think that that's something that the women at Dartmouth who hooked up with the fraternity brothers didn't really know.
That guy who tried to sexually assault me at ATO, he was a pledge at the time, right? And so all the pledges had to like photograph girls without anything on their tops, right?
What?
Had to photograph shirtless
I
girls.
hate that.
And so apparently in the basement there were pictures of like girls and just like their tits. And apparently this kid who was like so pushy with me, he had like the most pictures of girls. So when he comes at me, his behavior of being sexually aggressive gets rewarded by his brothers.
Fraternities are essentially unregulated bars. And the individuals that are responsible for managing that alcohol are themselves legally incapable of consuming it.
Most sororities don't throw parties because you can't have alcohol at all on the premises, even if you're over 21. So if sorority women want to drink or go to a party even at all, they have to do it at a fraternity where the fraternity brothers control the dispersion of alcohol.
Usually the drinks had Everclear in them.
What's Everclear?
It's a very strong form of alcohol, and the reason why they put it in there is because it would get you drunk quickly.
The idea would be to get everyone so incredibly intoxicated, blackout drunk, that would increase the chances that people would be getting laid. There was certainly something predatory about it. The fraternity brothers took great pride in having a predator-prey relationship with the women that would come to these parties.
So I was at a fraternity party. I went to a fraternity. I went to a fraternity party at MIT.
I never really, been in a situation like that.
He came up to me and we started talking. He was just this guy I thought was cute, and then we were just dancing at Fiji. This big frat brother came up to me and he put his arm around me and he took me away.